Back in the 60s, many British bands had the policy of not including their singles on their albums. This was mostly due to the fact that they didn't want their fans to have to pay twice for the same songs. Most of the A-sides became hits and are regarded as classics from that era, and the Stones released several B-sides which are almost as well known as the topsides. But this video will focus on those B-sides that were not included on their albums and therefore remain relatively obscure and a bit forgotten. Let's begin. May 1968 saw the release of one of the greatest singles by the Stones, and one of the greatest singles of the 60s as a whole. Jumping Jack Flash marked a return to a rawer and more organic sound, and the song became a huge hit. But the B-side was also a gem. Child of the Moon was the last gasp of the Stones in psychedelic mood. In fact, the song was written during the recording sessions for the Satanic Majesties album. The Stones recorded the song in March 1968 at Olympic Studios. It was the first time that the group worked with producer Jimmy Miller, an association which lasted until 1974. The band even recorded a promo video for the song. The video, which was directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg and shot at Epping Forest, featured actress Eileen Atkins. Child of the Moon is one of the finest B-sides that the Stones ever released, and one of their best psychedelic-flavored tracks. But the following B-side was also another great example of psychedelic pop at its best.
Dandelion, don't tell no lies. Blow away, dandelion.
Dandelion was originally released in August 1967 as the B-side of the song We Love You. The A-side featured John Lennon and Paul McCartney on backing vocals, and according to Keith Richards, they also sang backing vocals on Dandelion, but this has never been confirmed. In an interview from 2002, McCartney said,
"That was quite a loose and funky session, so whilst I remember being on We Love You, I'm not sure about Dandelion. But we were certainly having fun, so it could have been me. You'll have to ask Mick."
We Love You was recorded and released shortly after the Stones' drug trials, and the song was a message of appreciation to all the fans who showed support for the band. But it was also a sarcastic message to all the authorities who wanted to see them behind bars. Despite being released during the so-called Summer of Love, the song seems to look at flower power from a cynical point of view.
We were just sick of it after about 2 or 3 months. When you're talking about flower power, I don't mean ethically, I just mean very superficially, the beads and the flowers and everything.
Dandelion was more gentle in its lyrical approach. The song is a good example of the sort of whimsical surrealism that came to define British psychedelia. The track had a great baroque sound, with Nicky Hopkins playing harpsichord and Brian Jones playing soprano saxophone. Oddly enough, radio stations in the States plugged Dandelion as the A-side, and the song reached number 14 according to Billboard. The song is well known among fans of the Stones' psychedelic period, but the following track is probably the most obscure and largely forgotten B-side that the Stones ever released in the 60s. 19th Nervous Breakdown was released in the UK in February 1966. As Tears Go By was featured as the B-side, but As Tears Go By had already been released as an A-side in the States in December 1965. So the US version of the single featured a different B-side. Sad Day was recorded during the sessions for the Aftermath album, but the Stones decided not to include it on the record. The track featured quite an unusual structure. It starts off as an upbeat song.
Someone woke me up this morning, and I lit a cigarette.
But it soon turns into a moody track about a guy who can't get over the fact that his girlfriend has left him. At first, he's not sure whether his girlfriend has really left him or if it was just a bad dream. But eventually, his suspicions are confirmed when he receives a letter from his girlfriend telling him that their relationship is over.
Your letter I started here, and it left me with these tears.
The song was recorded in December 1965 at RCA Studios in Los Angeles, and it featured Jack Nitzscher playing additional piano and organ. 19th Nervous Breakdown reached number 2 in both the UK and in the States.
And who's driving your plane? Are you in control, or is it driving you insane?
Who's Driving Your Plane was released in September 1966 as the B-side of Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadow. By September 1966, music was starting to get more way out and experimental, and the A-side, with its frantic horns and noisy and discordant guitars, was certainly the most bizarre song the Stones had recorded at that point, both from a production and lyrical point of view. The B-side was more conventional in style, but the production and lyrics are just as over the top as the other side.
And while your father who trained you and your mother who trained you to be so useless and shy.
The song was a tough bluesy number featuring both Ian Stewart and Jack Nitzscher on piano. The presence of two pianos gives the song a sleazy burlesque vibe. Jagger's heavily echoed vocals are also quite unconventional. In fact, the vocals are one of the highlights of the song. This is Jagger at his best.
I wanna see your face when I'm leaving. Your legs are just gonna break down and die.
And the lyrics are a brutal put-down of a shallow posh girl who's obsessed with the latest trends and fashions, and desperately tries to fit in with the in-crowd.
In with the faces and their getaway places, 'cause they don't take no notice of you.
The single reached number 5 in the UK and number 9 in the States. Another forgotten B-side is this track, which originally appeared as the B-side of Paint It Black in May 1966. Long Long While was a soulful ballad very much in the style of Otis Redding. Jagger's lyrics were quite different from some of the lyrics that he was writing during that period. They are remarkably different from tracks such as Under My Thumb or Out of Time.
I was so wrong, and you were right.
The song starts with Jagger singing in a lower tone than usual, but it gradually builds up in tension until it reaches the climax of the song, with Jagger apologizing to his lover and begging her to come back.
I'm gonna try no
This is yet another song which was written during the recording sessions for the Aftermath album. This was a particularly productive time for the Stones, and the band decided not to include this song on the album. The single reached number 1 in both the UK and in the States. The Stones released their second single in November 1963. The A-side featured the song I Wanna Be Your Man, a track that Lennon and McCartney gave away to the Stones. The single got good reviews in the press, and it became their first top 20 hit in Britain, peaking at number 12. The B-side was a pretty cool instrumental called Stoned.
Out of my mind.
Just like several songs from the early days of the Stones, the tune was credited to Nanka Felge. This was a pseudonym that the band used whenever a song was written by the whole group. The pseudonym also covered pianist Ian Stewart and manager Andrew Oldham. The song featured Brian Jones on harmonica and Ian Stewart on piano. And it also featured Keith Richards playing some cool bluesy licks. Keith's amp was turned up so loud that it almost produced a feedback effect. The single was briefly released in the United States on the London Records label in March of 1964, but it was quickly withdrawn on moral grounds. As a result, Stoned remained unreleased in the States until 1989, when it was featured on the Singles Collection. And the US version of the single has become a highly valuable collector's item.
You kiss me, baby, when you give me the eye, but baby, I want to be there. Alright.
the Stones released their debut single in June 1963. The A-side was a cover of Come On by Chuck Berry.
Come on, I can't get started, come on. I can't afford to check it. I wish somebody come along and run it to it and wreck it.
Despite being massive Chuck Berry fans, the Stones were never satisfied with the sound of the A-side, and they felt that the song didn't really suit their style. The B-side, a cover of I Want to Be Loved by Willie Dixon, was more akin to the sort of stuff that the Stones played in clubs all over Britain.
You get so sweet, honey, can't be beat, but baby, I wants to be loved.
Record Mirror wrote,
The Rolling Stones debut with Come On, a song and performance aimed straight at the current market for groups. Good chance of selling well. I Want to Be Loved is a little unusual, reasonably entertaining.
The single only managed to reach number 21 in Britain, but the group had already become the hottest live band in London, and their popularity in clubs granted them a lot of press attention. The Stones were definitely here to stay, and as they say, the rest is history. I hope you enjoyed this trip back to the early days of the Rolling Stones. See you next time.